Hi, I'm Jason Meers, and this is AWS Connectivity Basics. So in the previous videos, we talked about Amazon regions, availability zones, and how you have a region with multiple availability zones. We talked about the fact that usually you'll have 3 or more availability zones in a region, and we can logically group those together in a VPC or virtual private cloud. We then moved on to showing an example of how we could create a VPC or virtual private cloud, and we could create subnets, and inside those we could create EC2 instances. And then the next thing we did was we talked in a bit more detail about all the periphery around it, different methods of connecting in and out of the VPC, and different ways of connecting to other services through things called endpoints. So that's just a quick recap of what we did in the previous video. What we're going to do in this video is talk in a bit more detail about these connectivity options that we introduced in the previous one. So we'll start with VPCs or virtual private clouds. So in this example, I've got 2 regions. I've got region A and region B, and inside it I've stuck VPC A1 and A2. These names don't actually represent anything. They're just something I made up just to talk through the examples. And in the other region, I've got B1 and B2 as another 2 VPCs inside that region. Now, one of the things that we only touched on was communication between VPCs. Now, in order to get one VPC to talk to another, we need to do something called VPC peering. So we're able to set up this connection between 2 VPCs where we say we would like traffic to be able to communicate between the 2 VPCs. Now, in this example, I've oversimplified it quite a lot because I'm showing the traffic traveling in both directions. That's something that you would call transitive, but by default, the traffic will only move in one direction. You'd have to set it up in both directions to get it to work like this. But just for the purposes of simplifying this, we're just going to look at that as one peering between 2 VPCs. But as I say, if you want to research more into this, look up transitive as the way of doing it between multiple ones of them. So on the other VPCs, again, I've got peering between them. And if I want to do it between the other ones, I can do it across regions as well. So here I've got VPC A1 and A2 being able to speak. I've got B1 and B2 being able to speak to each other, and I've got A1 and B1 being able to speak to each other together. Now, what I can't do here is I can't get VPC A2 to talk directly to VPC B1, because although there is a route round, it's not explicitly allowed to talk backwards and forwards to it. So again, it's not a transitive connection. It's a, between this one and it's between that one, which doesn't automatically mean we can do them over here. So I'm just going to fill in the last one here. So that's another peering. So if we want to do this properly as a mesh, we'd have to add another set of peering there and another set of peering there. So we've actually got 6 lots of VPC peering there just for 4 VPCs. And you can imagine that the more and more VPCs we add, the more and more difficult this gets. So that's the only point of this section. It's just to explain how VPC peering works and give you an idea just how complex this can get as you add more and more VPCs to your network. So the next thing I want to talk about is VPN, or virtual private networks, the way that we connect from the customer site over the internet into a VPC. So we've talked in the previous examples about a VPN gateway or a virtual private gateway. You might even just see it abbreviated to VGW. And we've got a single connection into that VPC A1, but we've got 2 tunnels. So one connection with 2 tunnels. If I want to connect to another VPC, I need to set up another connection that's got either 1 or 2 tunnels, and the same for all the others. So I need to set up VPNs into each VPC individually. Now, although I've shown 4 VPN devices there, maybe it's just one firewall that can do multiple VPN tunnels, but just for the sake of simplicity, I've shown 4 devices and 4 sets of connections. The important thing here really are the red lines. It's the connections, not really the device at the back end. So that's how you would do VPNs into 4 VPCs. The other thing we can do, and we talked about this in the previous videos, is something called a direct connect. So in this example, I've got customer site, and I've got a direct connect, which is going out to VPC A1. Couple of things to mention here. You'll notice that there's no internet in this diagram. We're not going over the internet. This is a private connection. And the other thing to say is that there is something I've missed out on that red line, which is called a direct connect location, which is basically where the customer equipment meets a provider's equipment. I'm just going to leave it out for simplicity in this diagram, but it does exist. It's called a direct connect location. But just for the purposes of this, we've got a direct connect from the customer site going into a VPC. And again, that's a one-to-one. If I want to do that again to other VPCs, again, I need to do it per VPC. So again, here I've shown 4 direct connects. Maybe again, that could just be one, but the important bit is here, it's these red lines, it's the number of connections into individual VPCs. Again, you can see that this could get quite complex the more and more VPCs you create. So we're going to move on to another type of direct connect, or another feature of direct connect in the next example, a direct connect gateway. So in this section about a direct connect gateway, we're going to show you how to simplify that direct connect environment. So again, customer site, we've got a direct connect from the customer site. Again, no internet here, it's a private connection. And we're going to go to something called the direct connect gateway. So the direct connect goes to a direct connect gateway, and the direct connect gateway can do almost like a hub and spoke thing here to consolidate it. So if you think about a bicycle wheel with a hub in the middle and spokes coming out from that, that's what we mean when we say hub and spoke. But it aggregates or pulls together all of these connections into one thing. So a direct connect gateway is a good way of simplifying the connections between a customer site and various VPCs. Now, again, there's lots of different ways you can use these direct connect gateways, and you can have multiple direct connect gateways, and you can even use something called VIFs or virtual interfaces. I'm not going to go into that in this video, but what I will say is a basic direct connect gateway is probably doing maybe 10 connections into 10 VPCs, but that could actually go up to maybe 500 connections if you start doing multiple gateways and multiple VIFs. But this is just a simple way of aggregating direct connect connections into a central hub and spoke type topology. So this is great, but we do have something even better than that, which we'll talk about next, which is a transit gateway. So this section, we're going to talk about the transit gateway. We mentioned this in previous videos, but we didn't really go into a lot of detail about it. So we're going to start again with customer site. And then I'm going to use a direct connect again here, and we're going to connect it to this thing called a transit gateway. Now, you may be able to tell on this video, I've done something a little bit different this time. I've now got one big region covering 4 VPCs. And I've done that for a reason. It's because you may remember a transit gateway is a regional construct. So it lives inside a region. So in this example, we can't span multiple regions because it's a regional construct, or it can only live in one region at once. So we'll start off simple in this, and then we'll, on the next example, we go to 2 regions again. So direct connect hits the transit gateway. I can also have a VPN connection into it, or a single connection with multiple tunnels. So this is aggregating the customer connectivity into a transit gateway. And then that's able then to do connectivity into VPCs. So we've got this hub and spoke thing going on again here, where this transit gateway is the hub, and connections from the customer site into the gateway or out of the gateway into the VPCs are done as spokes. So again, hub and spoke topology. So if that's all it did, it would be great, but it also does something with VPC peering. So it allows connectivity between all the VPCs and you achieve much the same as you would have done if you had all those VPC peering connections. So it aggregates and consolidates all those customer into region connections or into VPC connections, but it also does something equivalent to VPC peering. So a really good improvement there, because it can do more things than a direct connect gateway, and it can do all the things that VPC peering can do too, but in a much simpler way. But as I say, it's a regional construct, so it can only live in one region at once. So in the next example, we're going to show you how to do it over multiple regions. One thing I should add here is Another good thing about this is these VPN connections tend to be 1.25 gigabit a second. And although there's two connections, you're probably only using one at once, just because of the way that the VPN works. A transit gateway can do something called equal cost multipathing, which is essentially a way of bonding these connections together. So you can use both of them at the same time. So you're probably going from 1.25 gigabits per second to 2.5. And this will scale up to multiple connections. So it wouldn't be, out of the question that you could be going up to, 8 or 10 gigabits a second if you had enough connections. The only thing I need to add is it is a small charge, but it does add up. There is a charge for using these connections over here. So again, just something to bear in mind if you're going to use a transit gateway with something like equal cost multipathing or with lots of VPN traffic. So in the next example, we're going to show you how to do transit gateway over multiple regions. So we'll jump straight into it. The previous example was just a single region. We're going to show two regions here. I've made it simple before just because I wanted to introduce the concept of a transit gateway first before we started making it more difficult. So again, customer site. I've got a direct connect here, which is going to go to a transit gateway that belongs to region A. And then I'm going to have a VPN connection with two tunnels. So one connection, two tunnels. And then that transit gateway is going to give us connectivity and VPC peering between the customer site and those VPCs in region A. So this is what we talked about before in the previous example. But what I want to show now is how we do this between regions, because the next thing we do is we add a transit gateway in region B, and then we set up a connection or an attachment between the two transit gateways in the two different regions. So I'm going to come on to this attachment thing shortly after, once we just do the next bit. So again, direct connect goes into the transit gateway in region B. I can then have multiple VPN tunnels from that VPN connection. And again, it does the same thing. It consolidates or it simplifies the connectivity and the VPC peering. So what we've achieved here is the same thing. It's a transit gateway in region A that's looking after customer connectivity and VPC peering, or the equivalent of VPC peering, and another one in region B doing the same, consolidating customer connectivity as well as VPC peering. But we've got a peering between the transit gateways themselves as well. So we're able to do this between regions with two transit gateways, and you'd basically need a transit gateway per region if you're doing this. But I mentioned a couple of extra words here. We talked about this transit gateway having an attachment or attachments into regions. So an attachment is like the physical connection or the fact that it's connected to. So that's a term you might want to kind of consider, attachment. Once we've got an attachment into a region or regions, we've got associations with VPCs. So that means that this VPC is on the end of an attachment that goes to a transit gateway. So it's associated with it. It's an association. So we can have lots and lots of VPCs associated with a transit gateway. But the next thing we've got is something called a propagation. So it's possible for me to associate a VPC with a transit gateway, but not tell the other VPCs about it. So in that case, I'd have associated the VPC, but I wouldn't have propagated the routes or the routing tables to the other VPCs. So joining or associating a VPC to a transit gateway is different than propagating the information about how to get there on the transit gateway. So an example here might be, I might attach each VPC individually to a transit gateway, but I might not propagate the information about how to get there to all the other VPCs. So it may be that the customer side can get to each VPC individually through the transit gateway, but none of the VPCs can get to each other through the transit gateway because we may not have propagated the route between them. So again, attachments connect us into, it's like a physical connection into the region. An association is the fact that the VPC is, connected or associated with the transit gateway. But just having an association doesn't automatically mean that we propagate the routing information between them. So Lots of topics there. Again, this is an entry level video. If you need more detail, there's lots more information on YouTube or through AWS reInvent on this. So because we covered quite a lot of stuff there, what I'd like to do next is just do a bit of a summary on this. So let's go through the different things we showed in this video. We showed VPC peering and how you need multiple different lots of peering in order to get that mesh between them. And we talked about how much more complicated that can get when you've got, as the number of VPCs increased. We then talked about doing connectivity via VPN into VPCs. And again, that you have to do one for every VPC. So again, it can get more complicated. And note here, we are going over the internet for these VPN connections. We then talked about direct connect, and again, multiple individual connections into each VPC. Notice there is no internet here. This is a private connection. We don't go over the internet for it. We then talked about direct connect with a direct connect gateway that starts to give you this hub and spoke topology for connecting things together to simplify it. We then introduced the concept of a transit gateway so that we can show you how this transit gateway can consolidate the connectivity from the customer site and VPCs, and also the equivalent of doing VPC peering between them. So it's connecting things not only from a connectivity point of view, but also from a peering point of view. But we said that a transit gateway is a regional construct, so it can't span multiple regions. If you want to do this between regions, you need a transit gateway in each region with transit gateway peering. So that's where we got up to. I hope you found that useful, and I hope this was a good place to start before you look at more advanced videos about AWS connectivity. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope you found that useful.